Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I've been working backstage in WWE for over a decade, and I've seen my fair share of strange things. Wrestlers with superstitions, arenas that felt wrong, stories whispered between the veterans about places you shouldn't be alone in. But nothing prepared me for what happened in 2016 in an untelevised house show in Texas. That night, I was responsible for making sure the talent got to their matches on time. It was a smaller venue, one of those places that still smelled like stale beer from the 90s, with faded posters of legends who'd long retired. The night was winding down, and I was doing my final rounds, making sure the locker rooms were clear before we locked up. That's when I noticed it. One of the locker room doors was slightly open, just a crack. The light inside flickered, fluorescent, buzzing, sickly yellow. It should have been empty. Everyone should have been long gone. I hesitated for a second, my hand hovering near the door. A bad feeling settled in my gut, but I shook it off. Maybe some rookie had dozed off on a bench, or maybe one of the crew had forgotten something. I stepped inside. The room smelled like sweat and cheap deodorant. The usual. Metal lockers lined the walls, a few of them dented from years of abuse. The benches were empty, gear bags gone. No one was there. At least, that's what I thought at first. I turned to leave, but then I heard it. A voice. Not loud, not even clear, just a whisper. Mike. My blood went cold. I know what I heard. Someone said my name, and it wasn't friendly. I turned back, scanning the room. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Nothing, just those damn lockers, standing in rows like silent sentries. But one of them, one on the far end, was slightly open. A sliver of darkness between the metal door and the frame. I took a step forward, then another. My brain screamed at me to leave, but my body kept moving, like I was being pulled toward it. The closer I got, the heavier the air felt, like the room itself was pressing down on me. Then, as I reached the locker, I saw them. Eyes. Black. Deep. Not human. Not even close. Just staring. Not blinking. I couldn't breathe. I stumbled backward, hitting a bench so hard it scraped across the floor. And that's when the locker door slammed shut. Not gently. Not like it just swung closed on its own. It was slammed. Hard. Like something inside wanted out. I don't know how I got out of that room. My legs just moved. I ran, nearly tripping over myself, bursting into the hallway like something was chasing me. I didn't stop until I found security. They thought I was crazy, but when they checked, that locker was empty. Completely empty. I never went back to that arena. Never will. But sometimes, in quiet hallways, in the dead spaces of backstage where no one else is around, I swear I hear it again. That whisper, calling my name. Story 2. I've worked security for a lot of wrestling shows over the years. WWE, indie circuits, underground promotions that barely had enough money to pay the talent. I've seen it all. Most nights are the same. A little action, a little chaos, some spilled beer, a couple of rowdy fans. But nothing ever really sticks with you. Except for that night in Pittsburgh. That one. I can't shake. It was an old venue, the kind that smelled like stale sweat and decades of cheap nachos. The kind where the ceiling tiles sagged, and the locker rooms were just converted storage closets with flickering lights. It had history, though. Legends had wrestled here before they made it big. The walls could probably tell some damn good stories, but they could also keep their secrets. That night, I was stationed near the back entrance, keeping an eye on the talent. The wrestlers were warming up, stretching, running through their spots, slapping each other on the back. Normal pre-show stuff. Then I saw him, a tall guy, broad-shouldered, wearing a black mask and a singlet. He wasn't flashy, no logos or designs, just plain black, like an old-school bruiser. He was practicing holds with a younger guy, locking up, transitioning to a headlock, then a takedown. But something about him, it felt off. At first, I thought maybe he was injured. His movements were stiff, but not like a guy nursing a bad knee or a sore shoulder. It was something else. His motions were just a little too rigid, too deliberate, like a puppet being moved by invisible strings. And then there was his silence. Most wrestlers talk while they warm up. They give tips, call spots, laugh, cuss when something hurts. But this guy didn't say a word. Not one. Just went through the motions like he was running on muscle memory. I nudged another security guy beside me. "Hey, who's that?" "Who?" I turned to point, but the masked man was gone. Just gone. I scanned the room. Nothing. No sign of him. The younger wrestler he had been working with was chatting with someone else like nothing had happened. I told myself I had just imagined it. Maybe I was tired. Maybe he had walked away faster than I realized. But it didn't sit right. I tried to ignore it as the night went on. The show started, and the crowd got loud. Matches played out like they always did. Faces winning, heels cheating, fans screaming. Business as usual, until the main event. That's when I saw him again. One of the wrestlers, a big guy, 6'4", built like a tank, got tossed out of the ring near my section. The crowd backed up, giving him space, and that's when I saw him. The masked man, standing completely still, not watching the match, watching me. There was something so wrong about the way he stood. Feet planted, arms hanging stiff at his sides. That same unnatural stillness, like he wasn't fully alive, like he wasn't supposed to be there. I blinked, and he was gone. I felt ice crawl up my spine. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. I searched for him, scanning the crowd, the ring, the entrance ramp. Nothing. As soon as the show ended, I went straight to the back and started asking around. Nobody had seen him. Not the wrestlers, not the other security guys, not even the event staff. Finally, I found one of the older wrestlers, a guy who had been in the business forever. He was packing up his gear when I brought it up. "Big guy," I said. "Black mask, black singlet. Moves real stiff." I swear, the blood drained from his face. He stared at me for a long moment, like he was trying to decide whether or not to say what was on his mind. Then he swallowed hard and said, "Don't joke about that." "I'm not joking." His hands clenched around the strap of his gym bag. "Years ago, a guy just like that wrestled here. He died in the ring." A cold weight settled in my gut. I wanted to ask more, but he just shook his head, slung his bag over his shoulder, and walked out without another word. I don't know what I saw that night. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, or curses, or whatever the hell that was. But I did know one thing. I haven't been back since. Story 3. I never believed in curses. I laughed at ghost stories. I shrugged off superstitions. But after what happened to me, after what I saw, what I felt. I don't laugh anymore. Back in 2019, I was working as a ring announcer for an independent wrestling promotion. We were running a mid-sized show in a rundown arena outside of Chicago, the kind of place that still smelled like cigarettes and sweat from matches that happened 20 years ago. That night, the promoter brought out a special display piece, an old WWE Championship belt from the late 90s. He said it was the real deal, used in actual matches, though no one could say for sure which wrestler had owned it. The thing looked worn down, the gold plating slightly faded, the leather cracked with age. But it still had a presence. It still looked important. I remember standing next to it, staring at the plate and my own reflection in the tarnished metal. I don't know why I did it. I just felt compelled, but I reached out and ran my fingers over the belt's cold surface. The moment I touched it, a wave of nausea rolled through me, sharp and sudden. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet, and my vision blurred at the edges, like I was being pulled underwater. I let go and stumbled back, my breath coming short. "You okay?" one of the other guys asked. I nodded, forcing a chuckle. "Yeah, just lightheaded, I guess." But I wasn't okay. That night, when I finally crawled into bed, I had the worst nightmare of my life. I was standing in the middle of an empty arena. The overhead lights flickered, buzzing softly. The ring was there, but there were no ropes, just a squared-off platform, surrounded by darkness. Then I heard it. A crowd, screaming, not cheering, not chanting, screaming. I turned in circles, looking for them, but the seats were empty. The sound came from nowhere, from everywhere. The air felt heavy, thick with something wrong. Then I noticed the ring apron was moving. It was subtle at first, just a slight twitch, but then something crawled out. It came from underneath the ring, pulling itself up with stiff, jerky movements. A figure, tall, broad, wearing an old-school wrestling singlet, but its head was missing, not cut off, not bleeding, just gone, a black void where a face should be. It turned toward me, even though it had no eyes, no mouth, no features at all. The screaming grew louder, and then it ran at me. I woke up choking on my own breath, drenched in sweat. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might explode right out of my chest. I sat up, gasping, shaking, staring into the dark corners of my room like I expected that thing to be there, waiting. It wasn't, but I still felt it. The next day, I dragged myself backstage, exhausted, trying to shake off the dream. That's when one of the road crew guys pulled me aside. "Hey," he said. His voice was tight, uneasy. "Did you touch that belt yesterday?" I hesitated. "Yeah." "What?" His face darkened. "Don't do that again." I tried to laugh it off, but his expression didn't change. "I'm serious. Last guy who messed with it quit wrestling. Said he was being followed by something. Said he saw things in his sleep. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I didn't tell him about the dream. That night, I had it again. Only this time, it was different. The arena was darker. The screaming was closer. And the faceless figure, it wasn't under the ring anymore. It was standing right in front of me, closer than before, reaching for me. I woke up with a gasp. The sheets twisted around me, my skin ice cold. The next night, it happened again, and the night after that. Each time, the figure got closer. Each time, I woke up just before it could grab me. I stopped sleeping. I stopped wanting to sleep. I drank coffee until my hands shook. I forced myself to stay awake as long as I could, but exhaustion always won in the end. And every time I closed my eyes, I went back there, back to the screaming arena, back to it. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I told the promoter I was done. I didn't care about the money. I didn't care if I looked crazy. I packed my bags, got in my car, and left that night. I never touched that belt again. And after a few weeks, the nightmares stopped. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I still hear the screaming.